the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
And I get the feeling you've been cheated.
It is Tuesday, February 25, 2025. My name is Sam Seder. This is the five-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Elon Musk gives federal workers an extension, but some agencies say just blow it off. Meanwhile, Mike Johnson determined to bring his big, beautiful bill to the floor to cut Medicaid, waiting on a potential vote today. Remains to be seen if he's even going to bring it to the floor. Meanwhile, a government funding deal, this is separate, to avoid a shutdown 17 days from now, is in the offing. Your Democratic lawmakers are waiting to hear from you to demand they don't give a single vote to this unless Elon Musk is shut down. Meanwhile, consumer sentiment drops like a rock. Polls show Americans already exhausted by Trump's economy. Had to do it. Had to do it. FDA looks to rehire medical device and food safety experts that Elon Musk fired.
They're kind of important.
Eric Prince, remember him? The former Blackwater guys? Well, they are pitching the government on a private ICE posse.
That's not good.
Head of U.S. Whistleblowing Protection Agency, the special counsel, not to be confused with the Department of Justice special counsels, is looking to sue to protect all of the probationary workers who were summarily fired. Meanwhile, in New York City, DoorDash to return $17 million they stole from their New York City workers. I guess, no harm, no foul after you give it back. Meanwhile, the acting IRS had to quit. Sort of poorly timed. The VA cuts 1,400 more staffers. And Europe breaks with the United States on support for Ukraine as the U.S. votes with Russia at the UN. All this and more on today's Majority Report. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. It is
Newsday Tuesday.
This is the first time that we've been on the show together for
quite some time.
Like a week and a half almost.
Yes. How was your vacation?
Yeah. All right, moving on. It was a staycation, and it was more. Yeah, exactly. It was more like, how was the cruise? Well, it was more like bailing water.
Gotcha.
So, yeah, but
right.
Regardless, it's fine. It's modern life, the vagaries of modern life.
Understood.
Anyways, let's get right into this. First off, all right, let me just say this. Folks, yesterday, we gave a suggestion that you email hr@opm.gov to recount what you've been doing over the past 5 days. I gave an example of what I did. I fortunately gave everybody here another extension because I didn't get your emails. But regardless, and I just want to say that it really is probably my fault because I wasn't explicit about this. that you should not send any type of pornographic material or rude stuff. Because according to a Rolling Stone magazine, Elon's email demand is being met with very rude flood of spam. Online, people participating in the trend, that being sending emails to OPM.
We're so trendy.
I mean, here's the thing. So I saw NBC report that OPM was going to use AI to, assess whether what people had been doing at their job was worthy of, I guess, not losing their job. But I guess they have to be filtered by people first to find out whether, because I guess the AI, they don't want the AI maybe the AI is too young.
It's like when AI was supposed to look after the Amazon checkout list shopping experience, but it turned out to be Indian guys looking at cameras like half the world away.
Exactly. So online people participating in the trend, we were part of that trend, very trendy, have both sent their own versions of emails or drafted different examples they would send if they were federal employees. But they're not the only ones. Two sources familiar with the matter, including a Trump administration official, tell Rolling Stone that replies to the recent Musk OPM email have been flooded with pranks. And in the words of the Trump official, quote, very rude emails listing fake, vulgar, quote, accomplishments.
I mean, wow, are they trying to police free speech?
I know it.
Yeah, is comedy not legal anymore?
Right, exactly.
Or just, truthfulness. A lot of people do some weird stuff at work. And even sending links to graphic images of sex and scatological content.
Here's one of the Trump admin officials on background.
You don't respect the rule of law.
Yep, there you go.
Shat all over it.
Oh boy.
That's what you did. And we know it now.
Just want to make it clear, okay, to the folks at OPM, I wouldn't write off the scatological content so quickly. Dali was very famous for keeping a diary of every movement he made.
Yeah, there are
on a daily basis.
There are a lot of past geniuses that have been obsessed with their bowel movements. So
there you go.
You gotta find a needle in a pile of shit if you need to look there.
Just use AI to sort through it all.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go to this. Yesterday we played you some clips of people reacting to the Doge stuff around the country, and we have some more there's some hopeful perspectives in this, because the response that people have had around the country has been enough to certainly intimidate some Republican lawmakers. Some. And at the very least, David Dayen had a piece yesterday, and we'll go through that a little bit later, but there's some reason to believe that this part of Donald Trump's project, where the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025, Schedule F, get rid of all the civil service, and the sort of marriage with the tech bro folks.
Do it through AI.
At that reboot conference in San Francisco in September of 2024. That this part of the project may be failing. Like it may have he had his shot and it didn't work. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be a lot of problems associated with a Trump administration and legislation that's going to be bogus, and people are going to be hurt, and people are going to lose health insurance. But the fundamental structures of our government may remain intact, and we may be dealing with a very miserable 4 years, but not one that's going to take multiple decades to recover from. The jury's still out, but this is encouraging. Here is Representative Mark Alford, Republican from Missouri, Missouri's 4th district, holding a town hall meeting. This is a couple of days ago.
No, it was yesterday.
Oh, yesterday?
Yeah. Give credit to one of the, look this guy up, Daniel Sharpenberg. Midas Touch reposted this, a bunch of other people. He did the Facebook live stream, and he's from Missouri. 30,000 federal workers in the Kansas City area, a lot of them at the IRS. It's around 2.5% of the workforce in the Kansas City metro area.
That's nuts.
Yep.
And this is at Random's Coffee in Belton, Missouri.
Elon Musk has contracts with the federal government. But he is also, I think, doing an effective job.
Conflict of interest! Show me!
There are a lot of people who don't want to see waste, abuse, and fraud weeded out. Some of them here today.
I don't want him in charge of it.
But he is appointed by the president, the chief executive, who can appoint whoever he can appoint you.
I thought it was your job. It is your job.
Elon Musk and the president have agreed that if there is any potential conflict of interest,
It is your job.
and it's clear today that some people don't believe that would happen.
It is your job.
In the next election, to elect someone that you believe.
That we didn't elect Elon. Remember your oath. You don't represent us. You represent Elon Musk. You're a violation of your oath, sir.
And apparently that was, usually only 5 or so or 10 people show up, but it had filled up. And so the capacity was 40 people, but there were 60 people, according to some local Kansas City reporting, that were outside protesting, trying to get in.
Here is a second clip from a different angle at that same situation. Is this like a montage?
This is an excerpt from a local news report where he says this quote where that basically had gone
Let's hear
viral.
the whole. Let's hear the whole news, because I'm curious how the news is reporting it. The local news there.
I think you're living in the greatest time in American history.
The crowd groaned or spoke over most of Alford's answers. Elon Musk came up a lot.
Whether you like it or not, Elon Musk does have a security clearance.
Alford told federal employees who've lost their jobs to keep faith.
There are jobs available. God has a plan.
We don't need thoughts and prayers. That's not what we need right now. We need people to stand up for us and to say that I'm not going to carry the party line.
Alford definitely carried the Republican Party line in his answers and threw shade on Democrats.
I know that the Democrats have a plan to try to disrupt things in town hall meetings. I think you're living in the greatest time in American history.
So that's the quote where he said to the fired federal workers, God has a plan. Don't worry about it.
Well, God does, I'm sure. God and
Elon does too, apparently.
Hakeem Jeffries would agree.
Exactly. God has a plan, and it just may not include any of you getting a job. That's here. So Alford shows up on CNN, and I want you to just he's going to do the classic play, right? The outside agitators. If you were a national Democratic group, would you be focusing on a coffee shop in Belton, Missouri? I mean, this is so these protests, they may be like local indivisible groups or something like that. Like there might be local organizing.
Yeah.
But the idea that nationally speaking, I know where we got to deploy most of our stuff in Missouri.
At a town hall where the maximum capacity is 40 people. I mean,
it's projection. I mean, the Koch brother Tea Party is their model.
Yes.
Yeah. No, these are your constituents, buddy. These are your constituents. There are 30,000 people, and I'm not sure how it overlaps with other districts because Kansas City, covers some ground. But there are 30,000 people, but at least thousands who could be affected, who you're supposed to represent. That's why people are outraged.
So he goes on CNN, I guess, because he doesn't want to address his local news people. But here it is.
You normally do these meetings, and you say you have like 5 to 10 people show up. This was 150 people, I believe. Were you surprised by the level of frustration that you heard?
I would like to say that I was. And first, thank you for having me on, Caitlin. Look, we've done 90 of these since I've been in office. I'm a sophomore. I've been in office for 2 years and a couple of months now. And I love going out and talking to folks in our district. I love having one-on-one conversations. That's how we get things done. I welcome people who don't agree with me so that I can try to win them over, hear their concerns. I represent 772,047 individuals, Republicans, Democrats, independents, politically agnostic. I want to hear their ideas. And that's what we do usually at Mondays with Mark. Before I fly back to Washington, we have discussions. This was brought about outside agitators and some people from outside our district, not our constituents, who came there to make their voices heard, and I respect that. They have every right to be there. We did not prohibit them, even though they did not live in our district. But I really wanted to hear from our constituents. That's who sent me to Congress, and that's who I owe really my service to. And they were not really able to be heard. Some of them were there who had worked for the IRS and were getting laid off in Kansas City. And I really wanted to hear their concerns, and let's work together about how can we find you the next job. There are thousands of jobs, 175,000 jobs right now available in Missouri.
You say outside agitators. Are you saying that none of them were your constituents that were there?
No. Some were. Let me make that very clear. Some were our constituents. They clearly were not aligned with my way of thinking, and they did not vote for Trump. But that's okay. I wanted to hear from them.
Yeah, as
and
you
hear
said,
their concerns.
you represent Democrats as well, and you are the elected official. And some of the
Yeah. Just a reminder, you're the congressman there. What's interesting about this, though, is that, and what is really relevant about it, regardless of whether he in his mind thinks, well, none of these are my constituents, they didn't vote for Trump, they're completely irrelevant. He felt like he had to run to CNN. And maybe he would have tried to do something locally. Maybe he did. But he had to get on his plane, right, to come back for this vote today. And so these people are on the run. He doesn't go to CNN to deal with this unless he's worried about its implications back home.
I mean, these are good paying jobs in that district. When he talks about all these jobs that are available, where are you talking? What are you talking about? I mean, we're seeing this massive disconnect with national markers about how the economy is going versus how people genuinely feel, because we're in the midst of an extreme housing and cost of living crisis that has exacerbated after the pandemic and exploded after the pandemic. But where are these folks going to go? I mean, civil service you can have a career in that. But now this is really an effort to push people back into the private sector where there's a lot, it's not as good paying in many of these instances, and there's fewer protections. This is as old as it gets with conservatism. They're trying to funnel more people back into the private sector. It's just that they're doing it under this Doge branding, and it creates more precarity for these workers.
Destroying communities too. Think of all those jobs and all these different communities getting just the rug pulled out from under them, and all of the different economic activity that they participate in every day.
Also, I mean, again, this is also different from like losing your job because an entity goes under, and particularly the IRS, because I'll tell you something, every single one of those IRS workers know that every dollar spent on the IRS returns $6 or $7 back to the U.S. government. So the justification for them being fired, they understand you don't work at the IRS. I don't care if you voted for Trump or not. I don't care if you're in a red state or not. You don't work for the IRS and feel like taxes are wrong, man.
Right.
And no, you believe like taxes are an important part of what we do here and that everybody should pay their taxes. And you know, when they come to fire you willy-nilly, that they're just doing this because they want to avoid paying their taxes, because that's what happens. I mean, we've seen this with decreased funding for the IRS. What happens is wealthy people get audited less. Other people low-income people, middle-income people, they get audited at the same rate. But all the cuts on audits come from wealthy people because theirs are tougher jobs, essentially, because they have accountants, they have loopholes, et cetera, et cetera. And so the point being here, we played this yesterday. We saw people going to these town halls over the weekend and prior to the weekend, and it has an impact. And right now, there is supposedly, this is according to Politico, a deal. This is different. The Republicans are trying to vote in the House today. We'll see if they do. Democrats won't give them a single vote on this reconciliation bill, and they have a margin of, I think, 1 vote on this reconciliation. And then it's got to go to the Senate, and then they're going to have to figure out how to basically reconcile those 2 different bills because the Senate's not going to pass the same thing the House does. But there's a separate deal that is being negotiated right now. And this seems to be coming out of the Senate. And that is probably some form of a continuing resolution, because the government is scheduled to shut down in 17 days. And so what you need to do, can you get a number for me? You need to call your congresspeople and your senator, particularly if they're Democrats. Either way, it doesn't hurt. And say, no continuing resolution, no budget deal, no votes whatsoever to help Republicans until DOGE gets shut down. No impoundment. That's the issue. No impoundment. Because if the president has the unilateral power to decide that despite Congress having appropriated money for something, he is going to basically cut that or have a line item budget veto, which is also unconstitutional, then all bets are off. There's no point in doing any of it.
It's supposed to be illegal under the Impoundment Control Act of, 1974, but Trump's just flouting it. So yep. Democrats, apparently Jeffrey says they will hold the line on this, and we'll see.
It's unclear to me if Jeffries is saying they're going to hold the line on the reconciliation or on the continuing budget deal.
How about both?
See. Both is the way to do it. Capital Switchboard 202-224-3121. 202-224-3121.
If you call there, they'll redirect you to your congressman or senator. And sometimes you can, it depends on the number, but that's the right one. Oh, that's for the House? Okay.
That's just for the House? All right. And we'll get to the Senate one in a second. But first, a couple words from our sponsor.
Actually, they're the same.
They're the same, I think so. Yeah.
I'd like to be able to cook every night a meal for my child from scratch. Put all the love and care in it that I have in my heart for him and put it on a plate. But I don't have the time.
Yeah. And you're not a trad wife.
And I'm not a trad wife. I'm not a trad husband for that matter. And I'm not a particularly good cook. And I don't have a huge amount of time to go out and source all the things I need. This spice, that spice. But HelloFresh makes it easy for me to cook a home-cooked meal that my son can see me doing, because I also want to, sort of project that. And it's delicious. And you can do really quick ones. And in fact, HelloFresh also now has just ready to heat up meals. So it's both. They have, but the best thing about HelloFresh is that they have 15-minute meals that you can prepare. So you're doing the cooking thing, but you're also not spending like 10 hours doing it. These meals are done. They're basically 3 easy steps. And I want to thank HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit, for supporting the Majority Report. Here's an offer from HelloFresh. Get up to 10 free meals and a free high-protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/HelloFreshPodcast. One of the things I hate doing, trying to figure out what to have. Now I can just sit down with Saul, and I also know a little bit of what he's going to like, but he's like in that stage now where he's actually like expanding his palate. So I can do more sort of like interesting things. And with HelloFresh, they have 50 wholesome, hassle-free meals to choose from each week, delivered directly to your door. And HelloFresh's new ready-made meals go from the fridge to your fork in about 3 minutes.
Wow.
That's when I learned the value of a microwave. Same high-quality ingredients, restaurant-worthy flavor you expect from HelloFresh with none of the work. Their lineup of prep and bake meals come together with minimal mess in only 5 minutes of prep, so your oven does the work, not you. I've done stuff like pork sausage with what's that pasta? The big round one.
What, gnocchi?
No. No, round one. Rigatoni.
Rigatoni, yeah.
Yes. And I've done some like mushu cabbage. Now those are, I think, like, I don't know, 15 or 20 minutes, but they were delicious. Super easy. You could save valuable time with fewer trips to the grocery store thanks to HelloFresh Market, because you can buy other stuff too when you get your order for food. There's over 100 add-on items you can add to your weekly box, like quick breakfast, packable snacks, beverages, and more. And also the great thing about it is the portions are perfect. I'm not wasting any food. I hate to waste food. Right now, you can get up to 10 free meals and a high-protein item for life at HelloFresh.com/HelloFreshPodcast. 1 item per box with an active subscription. Free meals applied as discount on the first box. New subscribers only. Varies by plan. That's up to 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to HelloFresh.com/HelloFreshPodcast. We'll put the link in the podcast and YouTube descriptions. Also, sponsoring the program today, as a kid, you love eating cereal. As an adult, you don't want all that sugar, and you need more stuff, particularly, when you get to my age and like you're getting like your muscle mass is diminishing. I need protein. Well, then years ago, I found Magic Spoon. It is a cereal that basically redoes some of the sort of nostalgic flavors of your youth, but without the sugar and with a ton of protein. They also have like bars, like treats that are
phenomenal.
Phenomenal.
Great for protein. I've been saying before the gym, I've been loving those.
They're like crunchy cereal bars, but Magic Spoon's treats are delicious and what do you call it? No sugar. Every serving of Magic Spoon high protein cereal has crazy macros: 13 grams of protein, 0 grams of sugar, 4 grams of net carbs. They come in a bunch of different flavors like cocoa and cinnamon roll. For me, I am a cinnamon guy and a peanut butter guy, although the cocoa has been doing it for me lately. Kids, of course, love the chocolate chip cookie and the birthday cake. There's a whole range.
Like myself, like the birthday cake.
They also have like specialty flavors that come in and out. But their high protein treats are really awesome. You get 12 grams of protein on the go. This is great to give to your kids too, because you don't want to give sugar stuff. But I eat them in the afternoon. They come in mouthwatering flavors like marshmallow, chocolate, peanut butter, dark chocolate. They're great. They're super easy. You can have them at night. You can have them during the day. You put them in your kids' lunch. Put them in your backpack. Forget about it for like 5 days. Still, you got some food in there. It's better than like stuff that turns. Get $5 off your next order at magicspoon.com/Majority Report. Look for Magic Spoon on Amazon or in your nearest grocery store. That's magicspoon.com/Majority Report. $5 off. Check it out. All right. Getting back to this. Do we have an update as to whether they've actually gone for the vote yet? I don't think they have. So
not seeing it.
I'm just seeing this just popped up. The House budget resolution, this again is the reconciliation bill. They have a real problem here because the one thing that the Republicans always care about, this is the only policy they have. To be fair, there's two. One is tax cuts for wealthy people. They will put some lipstick on that pig and do a little bit of tax cuts for other people maybe. But the bottom line is we need to put as much money as we can in the hands of wealthy people. That's it. And part of the way they redistribute that is pretend like, well, we need to have a balanced budget. We need to cut down on our debt. We need to cut our deficit. So they look for cuts to give themselves more room to provide tax cuts. And the only place for them to look for cuts right now is at Medicaid. But the problem is that 75 million Americans get their health insurance through Medicaid.
And then when you add children to it, it's around 83 million in total because that includes what, CHIP as well in Medicaid?
Yeah, I don't know if S-chip would be rolled into, or CHIP and S-chip would be rolled into it, but they're looking to get anywhere from like $800 billion over like 10 years out of this. And understand, something like 45% of children born in this country.
41% of births nationwide covered by Medicare.
Medicaid.
Medicaid, that's what I meant. Nearly 50% of kids with special needs get coverage from Medicaid. 5 and 8 nursing home residents.
Nearly two-thirds of everyone in a nursing home is there on Medicaid.
21% of Americans nationally. So that's 1 in 5 Americans gets Medicaid coverage.
I can tell you from my experience, my mom, what happens is you spend down all of your assets. You get to keep like a car, I think, and maybe I think it was like $3,000 in Massachusetts. And then you've got to spend all that. And then you go into the nursing home, or you're in the nursing home and you spend it there, and then Medicaid starts to pick up the bill. So it's a completely insane system we have in this country. But Medicaid is what made it possible, and will make it possible for your parents, and has made it possible for my parents to get good care in a nursing home.
We have such a threadbare social safety net in this country, but these are the kinds of things that keep us from plunging our millions of people even more into despair. I mean, this is what's holding us all together here.
So here is the issue. You've got people who are on like so-called frontline seats. Republicans in California, Republicans in New York. I'm looking at a list right here of Republican representatives who won by a tiny margin. Arizona's first, Schweikert, won by 16,000 votes. There are 78,000 people who are going to lose their Medicare coverage, Medicaid coverage in that district. In Arizona's sixth, Cisco Monte, won by 10,000. 105,000 people stand to lose their coverage in that district. Colorado's eighth, Evans, won by 2,500 votes. 73,000 could lose their Medicaid. In Iowa, Miller Meeks wins by 800 votes, 66,000 recipients of Medicaid. Michigan, in Nebraska, in Pennsylvania, there's 2 people. In California, there's 2. Iowa, another one, none. Michigan, New Jersey, in New York 17th, Mike Lawler. He won by 23,000 votes. There are 98,000 people on Medicaid. In Pennsylvania's 8th, Bresnahan won by 6,200 votes. 92,000 people on Medicaid. You see the problem that Mike Johnson has. That's where the money is. They can't justify giving all these tax cuts to their conservative members who are like, hey, wait a second, I thought we were about cutting the deficit. So they're in between a rock and a hard place. Let's go to Alfred. Alfred says he'll vote to cut Medicaid because he doesn't care. And we're going to talk about this waste and abuse.
The other question you got was about Medicaid.
Yes.
At the town hall this morning, the coffee. When it comes to Medicaid, some of your colleagues are considering cutting Medicaid in order to pass your budget blueprint, to get the tax cuts done again, and to get Trump's other legislative priorities. Would you vote for a bill that includes cuts to Medicaid?
I will vote for a bill tomorrow that has savings for Medicaid. And I'll tell you the difference. This is just not a nuanced position. There is waste, abuse, and fraud in Medicaid. We're finding out through DOJ and through the access to this data that there is waste, abuse, and fraud.
All right, pause it. Okay, first of all, there's a report every year by the DOJ and by HHS on fraud in Medicare and Medicaid. This is not to be confused with improper payments, which sometimes refers to like technicalities, like we didn't get the form, page 3 on form D5 or whatever it is. Nobody has like the obviously exact numbers on fraud because you can't tell. You don't know. But DOJ, HHS, and remember, Medicaid is administered by the states. So they go after this. In all the fraud that they found, which is basically in line with private insurance fraud, health insurance fraud, incidentally, they have found that none of it comes and is perpetrated by beneficiaries. It's all by providers. It's by
nursing homes,
ambulance driver, companies, healthcare providers. I mean, I don't know what else to call it. It's middlemen.
The private equity that owns nursing homes, by the way.
I mean, they increasingly, that's where they're finding it. And so remember, again, don't confuse it with improper payments. Some of that may, in fact, be legitimately improper, but some of it is just a question of have every form been filled out. But the December 2024 report put out by the DOJ and the HHS Office of the Inspector General. Incidentally, Inspector General, those 18 Inspector Generals who were fired from all those agencies, their job is to find fraud and waste in their agencies, yet they were fired. The December 2024 report lists examples by the different kinds of fraud against Medicaid and Medicare that agencies have identified and prosecuted. Among those convicted, ambulance service providers, durable medical equipment suppliers, diagnostic labs, nursing homes, pain clinics, pharmacies, physical therapists, physicians, substance abuse treatment providers. No beneficiaries. No beneficiaries. So the point is like, you can put more cops on the beat, but if you cut Medicaid payments, the only thing that's going to happen is you're not going to reduce the amount of fraud. The fraud's still going to be there. The fraudsters still exist. The medical suppliers are still there. The ambulance companies are still there. The nursing homes are still there. The only difference is that less people are going to get Medicaid. That's it. So they talk about fraud and abuse. Here's Mike Johnson. We're not going to cut Medicaid. We're going to get rid of fraud and abuse and waste. First off, when we talk about waste, we know the administrative costs for Medicare and Medicaid are about a fifth of what they are for private insurance.
Mm-hmm.
So when we talk about fraud, there is one way to go after fraud. It's the exact same way you would if you were a private health insurance company. You get more investigators, which would actually maybe you would cut down and maybe it would pay off. So you could add more investigators, but cutting only boots people off. Go ahead.
You said that this is just the start of the process. Can you say unequivocally that further down the line, there won't be any cuts to Medicaid programs?
Yeah, so look, let me clarify what we're talking about with Medicaid. Medicaid is hugely problematic because it has a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. Everybody knows that. We all know it intuitively. No one in here would disagree.
Pause it. We know it intuitively? Why do we need to? Why do we know this intuitively? We have reports. We have reports. And there is, in fact, fraud in Medicaid and Medicare, and also in private health insurance.
But when you say intuitively, it's essentially like saying
article of faith.
We don't need to.
Trust me, bro.
Don't look at the numbers. Don't look at the numbers. And here's the thing: there is no way that DOGE sees Medicaid fraud. It is administered by the states. It is done like you have investigators who go after this stuff, professional investigators who know exactly how this is done, who have years of experience. They may be understaffed, woefully understaffed, but they exist. Congress does not have the ability to say, like, oh, this, we noticed in your line item that there's a line item for fraud. We're going to cut that out. We're going to take that number. They're just picking a random number that they think they can sell to the American public. That is intuitive. There is no way to cut fraud other than hiring investigators.
Well, they're hiring the ultimate investigator, Elon Musk. That's basically what their argument hinges on now.
Rick Scott on the case, too.
Yeah, trust Elon Musk. And I got news from Mike Johnson. The trust for Elon Musk is plummeting when it comes to the public. People are not thrilled about the unelected billionaire who's ransacking the federal government. Do we have more of his response here?
Good.
To Medicaid programs.
Yeah, so look, let me clarify what we're talking about with Medicaid. Medicaid is hugely problematic because it has a lot of fraud, waste, and abuse. Everybody knows that. We all know it intuitively. No one in here would disagree. We had a hearing in budget just last week or week before last, and they asked the experts, and the estimate is I think it's $50 billion a year in fraud alone in Medicaid. Those are precious taxpayer dollars. Everybody is committed to preserving Medicare benefits for those who desperately need it and deserve it and qualify for it. What we're talking about is rooting out the fraud, waste, and abuse. Every taxpayer, it doesn't matter what party you're in, you should be for that because it saves your money and it preserves the programs so that it is available for the people who desperately need it.
But here's the thing that doesn't make any sense, right? Like, if you had a retail store, and there was 10% theft going on, would your response be like, okay, well, if we're having 10% of our inventory stolen, what we'll do is order and maintain 10% less of an inventory, and then they won't be able to steal it? I mean, that's the logic of cutting Medicaid because you say there's fraud in it. No, you actually should add money to Medicaid to hire more investigators.
And it also is so frustrating to hear this come from him when this is supposed to be Congress's purview, right? I mean, if there was that amount of waste, fraud, and abuse, did that just crop up over the last year after you agreed to the last budget? Or are you just essentially saying, well, there always has been this billions and billions of waste, fraud, and abuse, but we agreed to it previously and didn't call it out.
What they're trying to imply is, and this is what the implication is, right? That it's the beneficiaries who are committing the fraud.
Yeah.
Because when you go down the street and you see somebody with Medicaid and they can go see a doctor, they want to put in your head that they have that illicitly. Yeah. But there is no Medicaid fraud from beneficiaries.
Yep.
It's the same thing.
It is all providers.
Yeah. with immigration, where they focus on illegal or violent criminals when actually they're trying to go after even people here.
And
Undocumented.
it's the same dynamic that Sam's describing, where they want people to, in their grocery store, look around look over their shoulder. Like, am I being looked at differently because I may be Hispanic or Latino? Are people wondering if my papers are here? Can we just pull up this KFF map? Because I think it's important to see where Medicaid is across the country. Apparently, in terms of percentage, the highest percentage is in New Mexico at 34%. That's if you put your cursor over it, you can see 34% there. But right next to it, right afterwards, is Louisiana, which is the home state of Mike Johnson. 32% of nearly a third of folks in his home state receive Medicaid coverage. This is 41 out of the 50 states now expanded Medicaid under the ACA. They're targeting these, I think, 20 million people who were added to the Medicaid rolls under the Affordable Care Act, which is the easiest way for them to cut. But these are states that agreed to it. And the federal government essentially subsidized it and then shared the administrative costs with these states, because they basically, the calculation under the ACA was we're going to offer this to them for free. And eventually, even these Republican states are going to say, well, we want to give health care coverage to our constituents. And they added 20 million people. There are still 9 states that held out. But Louisiana used to have a Democratic governor until recently, and they expanded. And now it's one of the highest percentage states of Medicaid recipients, much higher than the national average of 1 in 5. So there you go, Mike Johnson. That's the representation that he is giving to his constituents.
Again, this is all about reducing the number of people on Medicaid. This is not about stopping fraud. There is no, if you want to stop fraud, you hire more investigators. You do not cut aid to beneficiaries. And then the other way that they're going to do this is, and this dovetails into it, when they say fraud, they're not talking about who actually commits the fraud. The hospitals, the doctors, the ambulance companies, the medical device providers, et cetera, et cetera. They're trying to imply that the people who have a Medicaid card, they're the ones who are committing the fraud. And then the next step is we're going to put a work requirement on them, because they're just, all these lazy people are sitting around just so they can get their Medicaid. And we know, we've seen these experiments. In Georgia, they they got a waiver to do a Medicaid experiment. And ProPublica, along with The Current, did a deep dive into this. They had a program called Pathways. And it was an experimental alternative to Medicaid expansion. It has cost taxpayers more than $86 million. And there was a huge enrollment shortfall. Only 6,500 participants enrolled in the first 18 months of the program, which was about 75% less than the state had estimated for year one. I don't even know what that means when you go a year and a half into it. It also slowed down work. The state found it difficult to verify that people are working to keep their benefits. So Georgia has gone from monthly checks to annual ones. It's been a complete disaster.
Yeah. And also, there are millions.
More expensive.
More expensive. They don't care about that. I mean, we know that Cobra is more expensive than if we were to have temporarily expanded Medicare during COVID, but we didn't do that because of the pitfalls of allowing people to imagine a reality where the government provides them with health care. There are millions and millions of people on Medicaid who are working already. So these work requirements are basically meant to target that small percentage of people who need it for disabilities and for other reasons. And maybe they haven't been able to find work because our economy is crap, which the Republicans keep saying, by the way, even though now that Trump's in office, we're supposed to not care about it anymore.
This is the only state in the country that has work requirements for Medicaid, and it has been an unmitigated disaster. It cost more just to try and verify. And they couldn't get people to, and they have less people covered.
Yep.
It doesn't get people, well, I was trying to get away without working, and now I'm going to go out and work now so I can get the Medicaid. As if this is why people are not working.
Yeah, I mean, KFF did this analysis too in 2023. Among adults under 65 with Medicaid who do not receive benefits from the Social Security disability programs, supplemental security income, and Social Security disability insurance, and who are not also covered by Medicare, referred to hereafter as Medicaid adults, 92% were working full or part-time, and the part-time is 64%. So, or not working due to caregiving responsibilities, illness or disability, or school attendance. So they're talking about 8% of Medicaid adults.
And of that number, you had retirees, you had people unable to find work, or were not working for some other reason. So we're talking about a very small percentage of people who are not working because they just don't feel like it.
We have it's the working poor. There was an analysis years ago that Walmart and McDonald's are some of the top employers of people who are on Medicaid and food stamps, but working at those jobs. They're working. We live in a country where you can work full time and not be able to afford to pay your rent or come close to it, let alone if you have a family. So there are people who are working all the time and are still on Medicaid and food stamps.
And corporations like Walmart know that they can work with the government to keep those people on a treadmill.
They outsource it. It's actually a huge benefit to these mega corporations that they don't have to worry about providing a living wage for people because, hey, the taxpayer will foot the bill. We should expand these programs, but we should also force corporations to pay a higher wage. You know what a really efficient way to run the government would be to raise the minimum wage, which we haven't done in years, even in this massive inflationary period on a federal level, so that perhaps other people wouldn't have to rely on some of these government programs when they're already employed. And we're in such a low employment period, but the cost of living is so intense that people are resentful of the economy, rightly so.
Calm makes art. I work while on Medicaid. The yearly coverage for my chronic illness last year was over $80,000. I make $20,000 annually, and I'm stuck in low-paying jobs. No way I could cover that without it. Nicola, I have an awesome plan through Medicaid in Pennsylvania. I bust my ass. I still qualify, though, just barely, because I get paid crap, no benefits, in spite of working full-time. I am not unique. I despise these people.
Nope.
I mean, this is the story of Medicaid in this country. And what you're seeing is like a full court press by all the Republicans to come out and basically claim that the government across the board, to justify Elon Musk's completely random firing spree, fueled by, who knows what, ketamine and blow and Twitter rage, going through and firing government officials willy-nilly, firing people who are experts. They fire everybody who's gotten a promotion. So you're looking for government efficiency. Your first fire are people who are probationary. That means people who have had a promotion in the past 6 months. You're firing the people who have been doing the best. Then you're firing new experts brought in to deal with things like AI and new medical devices. They had to rehire some of those people at the FDA. Then you're accidentally firing the people who are in charge of our nuclear weapons. Like, this is not a surgical thing. This is just simply an assault on government, period. Mm-hmm. And when they talk about fraud in Medicare, they make it sound like there are all these people walking around with Medicaid fraud. There are people walking around with Medicaid cards who don't deserve them, who have been fraudulent, but none of the fraud are beneficiaries. It's all suppliers. And then you get guys like this guy sort of a central casting evil capitalist from Canada in this instance, an import, who is opining about the wastefulness of government and knowing exactly zero about what he's talking about. Watch him get faced. He is on. He is
Laura
on
Coates Live.
Yeah, Laura Coates Live. He's on with a guy named Tom Malinowski. I don't know who Malinowski is.
He's a former rep from New Jersey.
Former representative from New Jersey.
Yes, you can't be surgically precision. There's no way to be surgically precision.
Sorry, we watch everything at
a million speed.
Yes, you can't be surgically precision. There's no way to be surgically precision in this. You have to cut more because you just don't know. There's no way to do it. Remember, we've never audited government for 100 years. Never done this before. You may not like it.
Tom doesn't think that's right. Tom, what's your reaction to that? The government's not audited.
Every agency of the federal government, it helps to know some things if we're going to have this debate. Every agency of the federal government is audited by independent inspectors general. USAID was audited over 60 times last year. And one of the first things that Donald Trump and Elon Musk did was to fire all of the inspectors general. They fired the auditors and they put in charge this billionaire with his 50 child interns who know absolutely nothing about the federal government. And Kevin, like what you're talking about, it might work for a company that makes widgets, because we can do without the company that makes widgets for a few months while you get in there and you restructure it. You can't do that to the FAA unless people aren't going to fly in planes for the next 4 or 5 months. You can't do that to the Defense Department unless you don't want to defend this country for the next 4 or 5 months. It's ridiculous that we're even having this argument. And I'm someone who believes there is waste in government and there are ways to get at it, but not by firing everybody first, shutting things down while you investigate. Do the investigation, work with Congress, work with these employees, do it right. It's been done before.
I would add, you can't shut down food safety for months. You can't shut down environmental protections for months. You could say that health insurance, you could go on and on and on. And to the extent that there is waste in government, we know what it is. We know what it is. It is lobbyists coming in, donors feeding at the trough. It is contracts to Tesla for $400 million worth of electric armored pickup trucks that they have. I mean, that's where the waste is. The waste is a function of people just like that dude on that panel who's donating money and wants his tax breaks, wants his subsidies for his company. That's where all the waste is. I mean, it's this notion that, but they need to malign government. And this is why it's been so bad when the Democrats decided to join in this chorus in the 90s. It was inevitable that it was going to lead to this place where you start to create this notion of government being bad. And frankly, we were fortunate in some respects to have the American Rescue Plan in 4 years ago, where people actually saw like a material benefit from the government, so that there's still sort of like some muscle memory as to the government actually can help me.
Yeah, right. I mean, and I think the planes falling out of the sky is a kind of visual metaphor for all of this, which is that we need more government, less austerity, more air traffic controllers, more workers keeping us safe, more people inspecting our food. If there's anything that comes out of this past horrific month, it's hopefully like a broad understanding and a resistance that's based in government being good. That is the one thing about this time around where you have a little bit more hope, where we're not focusing on Russia to begin Donald Trump's first term. We're focusing on the core tenets of government and how it functions and what it should do for people in our society. It's more educational this time around, even though it's more painful, I think, and they're way more extreme.
And the economy is going to
Collapse,
really
most likely.
Collapse, yeah.
Well, we'll get to that. We'll get to some polling and consumer sentiment in a bit. I mean, I was saying I went into what do you call it? Key Food, and there was like no eggs.
Oh yeah,
it was nuts. But before we get there, just to before we move into the fun half. I just want to read this, a little bit of this piece by David Dayen in the Prospect yesterday. The coup has failed, so that people have a little bit of hope. I mean, look, this is not, there is no reason to stand down now. And this is, there's going to be a lot of people who are going to be hurt by what's going on with the Trump administration going forward over the next 4 years. A lot of people are going to lose their jobs. A lot of people are going to lose their health care. A lot of people are going to lose their support, food stamps. I mean, we're just across the board. We're going to increase suffering in this country. But in terms of like our ability to build back, as it were, following a Trump administration, Dayen proclaims that he believes that the coup, as it were, has failed. The idea of consolidating power and punishment of enemies, he believes, has on some level fundamentally failed. He believes that there was an overreach. He's talking about every headline out of Washington being about Elon Musk. There's a sense among Americans that Trump is not keeping his eye on the ball. They are exhausted by Elon Musk.
Ugh.
Sorry.
Tried it
time.
again.
He writes, as the economy drifts towards a combination of higher unemployment and higher inflation, last seen in the presidency of the late Jimmy Carter, Trump will find it harder to simply sweep in and take power. Town hall held by Rich McCormick, Republican in Georgia last week, in a district that went for Trump 60-38, was a disaster, with angry constituents demanding he stand up for them and not let Trump control the federal budget and cut services for the needy. Other deep red districts have seen similar dynamics. In rural eastern Oregon, a town hall held by Representative Cliff Benz, Republican in Oregon, in a county that went 68% for Trump, the crowd shouted, "Tax Elon, tax the wealthy, tax the rich, and tax billionaires." In Oklahoma, constituents demanded that Representative Kevin Hern, who won in November 60-34, put Musk under oath. In Wisconsin, Representative Glenn Grantham won by a similar number. At a town hall near Oshkosh, he faced a parade of boos and shouts, as did fellow Wisconsinite Representative Scott Fitzgerald, Republican. I can tell you right now that no national group is saying we need to dedicate our resources in Oklahoma or in, a county that went 68% for Trump. Nobody's doing that. Nobody's going to their donors and say, if we just had funding.
Right.
I mean, this is, people are pissed. And now, there's a small percentage of people who are paying attention. Maybe these are Democrats and indivisible people going out to these town halls. I have no doubt that's the majority of them. These are not Trump voters who are doing that. But even if you won by a 68% to 38% or 60 to 38% margin, you don't want the news reminding people who are not paying attention to this that, hey, wait a second. Not only are the egg prices high, which they know when they go to the store, but what's going on?
I also, these are real people. in these communities. These are real people who are going to be affected and see their economy destabilize. And even if they're the biggest MAGA person ever, they may go to soccer with another family, and like their kid is playing on the soccer team with parents, one of them who just lost their job, laid off in the federal workforce. So the idea that this can happen and not affect communities across the country, maybe we'll get into this in the fun half. There are almost 1 million federal workers in states that voted for Donald Trump. Over 1 million, or almost 1 million. And I think a lot of these folks are going to run for office. We'll see if they have good politics. I mean, that's kind of more what I care about. But I do think that there's going to be a grassroots movement to have some of these fired federal workers challenge these Republicans.
Yep. All right, we're going to take a break, head into the fun half, and we've got some polling on the economy, which is really stunning.
Yep.
Just a reminder, it's your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member, join themajorityreport.com. When you do, you not only get the free show free of commercials, you get the fun half. You can IM us. We're going to take calls. I will even read some of these IMs, like cinematology. Sam, if you couldn't find the eggs because it was nuts, I think you might have been in the wrong aisle.
Huh.
Yep. I had that coming.
Nah.
Also, Just Coffee, justcoffee.coop, fair trade coffee. Use the coupon code Majority, get 10% off. You can also buy the Majority Report blend. Emma, no ESPN.
No ESPN.
This
We're
week.
on a bit of a hiatus for right now. Appreciate everybody understanding, but lots going on. So.
Oh yeah, tons going on Sunday.
Yeah, not much, except whatever. We get it. The Knicks can't beat the Cavs or the Celtics. It's sad. So, moving on, Matt, what's happening on Left Reckoning? I'm avoiding eye contact.
Tonight on Left Reckoning, talk to Elise Joshi. People might remember her as a Gen Z for Change activist who interrupted KJP during a climate speech saying, hey, stop doing all these leases. And then we also have Van Jackson on to talk about the Pentagon cuts. He does the Undiplomatic podcast, and we'll talk about Ukraine and some other stuff too. So patreon.com/Left Reckoning tonight at 7 o'clock Eastern time.
Although speaking of basketball, what a comeback by the Timberwolves! Congrats to you guys.
Anthony Edwards just swatting SGA out like he's Kevin O'Leary. Also Canadian. So.
Incredible.
All right, we'll see you in the fun half. 3 months from now, 6 months from now, 9 months from now. And I don't think it's going to be the same as it looks like in 6 months from now. And I don't know if it's necessarily going to be better 6 months from now than it is 3 months from now. But I think around 18 months out, we're going to look back and go like, wow. What is that going on? It's nuts. Wait a second. Hold on for a second.
The Majority Report.
Emma, welcome to the program.
Hey.
Matt.
What is up, everyone?
Nomi Key.
You did it. Let's go, Brandon.
Let's go, Brandon.
Bradley, you want to say hello?
Sorry to disappoint everyone. I'm just a random guy.
It's all the boys today.
Fundamentally false.
No, I'm sorry. Women's.
Stop talking for a second and let me finish.
Where is this coming from, dude?
But dude, you want to smoke this 7A?
Yes.
Hi, me? This me?
Yes.
Is this me?
Is it me?
It is you.
Is this me? Hello, is this me?
I think it is you. Who is you? No sound. Every single freaking day. What's on your mind?
Sports. We can discuss free markets and we can discuss capitalism.
I'm gonna go throw up.
Libertarians.
They're so stupid though.
Common sense says, of course.
Gobbledygook.
We fucking nailed him.
So what's 79 plus 21?
Challenge Matt.
I'm positively quivering.
I believe 96, I want to say.
857-210-501 1/2 3/8
9/11, for instance.
$3,400, $1,900.
5, 4, $3 trillion sold. It's a zero-sum game.
Actually, you're making me think less of it.
But let me say this. Poop.
You can call it satire. Sam goes, it's satire.
On top of it all, my favorite part about you is just like every day, all day, like everything you do.
Without a doubt. Hey, buddy, we see you. All right, folks.
It's just the weak being weeded out, obviously.
Yeah, sun's out, guns out. I don't know.
But you should know.
People just don't like to entertain ideas anymore.
I have a question. Who cares?
Our chat is enabled, folks.
I love it.
I do love that.
Look, gotta jump. Gotta be quick. I gotta jump.
I'm losing it, bro.
2 o'clock. We're already late, and the guy's being a dick. So screw him. Sent to a gulag?
Outrageous.
Like, what is wrong with you?
Love you. Bye.
Love you. Bye-bye.
And back.
We are back. Sam Seder, Emma Vigeland, Majority Report.
Hello.
Otka Dragon, do you think Elon Musk's abandonment of his kids has to do with his belief in eugenics?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, so I can't believe that you guys didn't play that yesterday.
Well, it's an older clip.
Is it really older? Okay, then maybe I see, you can never tell. But Elon Musk walking away from his kid, it's just amazing.
Black-pilled Kiwi. This show is hard to pin down on Ukraine, so I just want to put this to you guys. If Ukraine is pressured into concessions to Russia through the withholding of military aid, is that an acceptable situation for left-wing ideological priorities?
It depends on what the concessions are. I mean, I want to see the end to this conflict. The idea that anyone on the left would be denying who the aggressor is in this instance, that's crazy. And I don't think that there are many people. I think it's overstated. Russia obviously invaded Ukraine and is the aggressor. But it can also be true that Biden's tripling down on like NATO expansion and sending this many arms without seemingly having an overarching end goal in mind perhaps has exacerbated the situation and wasn't the best route to go down. And so I'm very much in opposition to Donald Trump just taking Russia's side. And now you see Russia and Israel voting together with the United States at the UN. Like now we're the axis of aggressors. But it depends really on what the concessions are. So that's the reality of it.
I would also say, like, you know, to the extent that we can divine what Ukrainians want is what where I tend to land on this. I don't think that the U.S. should be inhibiting Ukrainian aspirations. This is a situation where, you know, to the extent that I don't think we're going to as much, the extent that we're arming Ukraine, it is in light of an invasion by another country in service of an agreement we made with them 40 years ago, 30 years ago, to give up nuclear weapons. And so, you know, if I had to guess, I think it's unlikely that they're going to get back territory that they had in 2013. Yeah. But
also, there's more appetite for negotiation within Ukraine than there was a year ago.
That's my sense. You know, if you look at like polling.
Right. And it also depends on the people who are in the regions that would be affected. So that's where we have to ask those particular questions.
It's why we're open to a two-state solution, even though we'd note, like, from an ideological or pure, like, theory standpoint, one democratic state in Palestine would be the proper solution. But ultimately, like, stopping bloodshed and war is, you know, order of the day.
New Jersey mailman, Sam, you have a show where you can literally have a Ukrainian civilian on to ask what they want. Well, I think it really is going to take more than one civilian to determine. I mean,
But it's also a question of like, what is, I appreciate the sentiment, but the reason I think that we focus so much on, first of all, there was a genocide in Gaza in comparison to Ukraine, is like, there's no shortage of pro-Ukraine voices on mainstream press. And that's the reality of it. And so what counter narrative are we providing here? Or like, what gaps are we filling? Because the United States is against, or under Biden was against the aggressors here, it lines up so that there are many pro-Ukrainian voices, and it's a very mainstream opinion on the Democratic side of the party. So I'm not necessarily sure what this show would provide in that way.
Well, and I'd also say, like, some so-called pro-Ukraine voices are selling them something that wasn't ever on the table, which is like actually support to win this war. Yeah. And so, like, when Richard Blumenthal, senators, go out there and say, like, we're going to fight to the end, and actually you look at the way that America has been supporting it, which is to not really be that offensive and basically like kind of restrain the Ukrainian forces. Like, we were never actually, unfortunately, what Hillary said was going to happen has happened, which is that it's going to be in Afghanistan where we have people die and try to just bleed Russia. But what that means for Ukraine, I mean, we see.
Yeah. I mean, and the Ukrainian people still have sovereignty, and it depends on, they I know organically want to fight Russia, right? But the question is, what place does the United States have in terms of negotiating this? And we supported helping Ukraine fight Russia and arming them. But I also think that we have to have an end point in mind here. But the Trump administration just siding with Russia and repeating complete lies about who invaded who is certainly not the way to go.
Pinky, the Brainworms, please tell me you've seen the great Gary Stevenson's Gary Economics School, Piers Morgan and Dave Rubin. No, but I do have that video up in front of me, so we'll later. Spilkus, Insane Clown Posse, a.k.a. U.S. federal government. Chivitar, hey Sam, I know you're a fan of the 90% tax rate. Can you explain the difference between that and the 94% rate in 1945? Something about a surtax? I don't know. I cannot. Sorry. I've seen this. It's okay.
I think it's so good.
All right, let's play it then.
Okay.
What?
Here is
it's not on the sheet, but
what's this guy's name?
This is Alex Byron.
Alex Byron. I don't know who he is. A comedian, I guess. This is his Elon Musk. It's better if you close your eyes.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't look like Musk at all, and he doesn't have. He sort of has the affectations, but he wants this rated. I mean, I would give it like a 7.8.
It takes a little bit to get cooking, but once he does the knock knock joke or whatever they set up, the light bulb joke, I think is really cooking.
Yeah. So comedy, they're trying to take this away. No, not gonna let them. Yeah, I saw Tony Hinchcraft at the skit, and he said Puerto Rico was a pile of garbage, and it's like, yeah, well, it's great. It is. So, yeah, I'm having sex, I love doing it. Yeah, I got one. So, how many Democrats does it take to screw in a light bulb? It's like, well, yeah, so many, because they got to do pronouns and just need. Doge is going to work on that. Yeah, but they're going to get me and Grimes when we would have sex, right? And yeah, it's like, we'd have like charging up like anime, and I'd go in from the back and I'd be like, I'm going to put baby inside you. I called my nuts the Dragon Balls. I love anime. And my favorite comedian.
Okay, yeah, that's Alex Byron.
I thought that was pretty good. I tried to look away so I wouldn't be able to see his face. It sounds like
the problem is I watched him first and I got too distracted by he doesn't obviously look like, but when it sounds, it's very good.
I mean,
how many Dems does it take to screw into a light bulb? Like so many.
like so many. Also, I still don't know if we have any evidence that Elon Musk has ever had sex. Yeah. That is also an open question. We know that he's very interested in producing males in a way that seems to have been predetermined by science. Isn't that
orders them
central claim of his latest consort or the woman who the mother of his latest child, right?
Well, I mean, that he's a deadbeat, I think, is the main thing that she's talking about.
Interesting. Yeah. We still don't know if he's capable of even having sex. That's an open question.
Peppadew, as a purely app listener, it sounded like that was Elon. Same with Scary Mountain Wizard. Same with Dan from Columbus. If I wasn't watching on YouTube, I'd think that's actually Elon.
I mean,
Kat says that impression made me physically cringe, so it was accurate.
Him and Peter Thiel have the same affectation of being unable to speak, basically. Is what
Add
I'm
Mark
trying to say.
Andreessen to that list.
There is a neuroatypicalness, I think, that they share.
Definitely, and also a whole sociopathy thing.
Yes. And also South African in their accent, which also South Africa has the most awkward accent, I think, of any like English speaking, like when you hear a South African speak English.
Yeah.
It's a little awkward when you're, a settler colonial society, right? To make that
in
work.
general, yeah.
Make that work.
646-257-3920 is the number. 646-257-3920 is the number if you want to participate in the program. This is both depressing and, I think a sense of how Trump is not addressing any of the concerns of the American public. Here is Harry Enton. And I think, I don't know that Trump he may not care as long as Elon Musk is around, because he may feel like Musk's money is going to protect him. And at the very least, he's got the Supreme Court has already said that he's not capable of being prosecuted.
Mm-hmm. That's part of why he ran for president again. What, if not the motivating reason, which was, I need to get these 92 court cases off my back, and he's succeeded. So, what is his agenda now? What does he care about now? I think maybe he has some dirty deal with these crypto bros about his meme coin. That's my theory right now, is getting rich off of that, and that's why having Elon Musk around.
Oh, he's
great.
made so much money just in the past 6 months.
Right.
And I think he sort of feels like he has no jeopardy. There's no jeopardy going to jail. He's got Musk doing most of the work. He can play golf. He can work 2 or 3 days a week, maybe. And so I don't know how much he cares, but it's going to make it a little bit more difficult for the people who don't feel like they're going to be, dead in the next 10 years. And they're not Donald Trump in terms of the Republican politicians. Here's Harry Enton.
Rutrow, the reboot not as well received as the original. Economy is currently good or excellent. Look at this. In April of 2017, it was 40%. Look at where we are in February of 2025, just half that level. 20%. My goodness gracious. The term one high was 63% of Americans in February of 2020 thought the economy was excellent or good. This 20% we have currently going on right now is fewer Americans saying the economy is excellent or good than at any point during Trump's first term. This is not a good sign, Kate Baldwin.
J.D. Vance said last week, you got to give them time, even though that's not what they promised in the campaign. They said they bring prices down day one. But what is the view of the future economy then?
Yeah, so this is the current economy.
Pause it for 1 second. Oh, that's interesting. J.D. Vance said that? I didn't realize he was still vice president.
Right. Elon Musk is the guy that's always being seen publicly.
Isn't Vance the one who brings, who's basically caddying for Trump?
I mean, that's a really quick drop off. The honeymoon period This is
very quick.
I've never seen something like this, really. I mean, Joe Biden, I'm looking at his, when he finally crossed, according to the 538 average, the more disapproval than approval in September of 2021. So it was an 8-month, essentially, honeymoon period, and people mark that by the Afghanistan withdrawal. This is a month for Donald Trump. I mean, even less. Like, those are the economic numbers. But we also saw last week, I headlined this, multiple polls showing that within, I guess it was Quinnipiac, that he had a 10-point increase in disapproval rating to make it above 50% disapproval within less than a month. And then the economic numbers are showing it as well.
Said last week, you got to give them time, even though that's not what they promised in the campaign. They said they bring prices down day one. But what is the view of the future economy then?
Yeah, so this is the current economy. How about the future economy? Is the economy getting worse or better? And all I can say is yikes. Yikes. Again, compare it to where we were in the first term at this point, April of 2017, 53%. The majority said it was getting better. How about now in February of 2025? The majority say it's getting worse. 59% compared to just 35% who say it's getting better. Worse is higher now than at any point in Trump's first term pre-COVID. This number, to me, is much more worrisome. Perhaps the worst number I've seen for Trump on the economy, because it says even if the economy now isn't great, they also project that it's only going to get worse from here. This is a big, big yikes.
And fold in inflation, just like general views on inflation.
Yeah, okay. So I think the question is, what's exactly cooking here? What is going on? You know, there's this whole idea that Trump was going to bring down inflation, right, Kate? So what are Americans actually saying? You know, are Google searches for inflation going down or going up? They're going up. They're up 123% from February of 2017. And more than that, perhaps even more important, they're up 23% from last month. Americans' fears about inflation are not going away. They are as interested in it as they were by the end of the Joe Biden administration. And the bottom line is they're far more interested in it than they were at any point during Donald Trump's first term. As I said at the beginning, the reboot, the sequel, is not being anywhere near as well received as the original.
There it is.
That is, that's the most important, I think, number. The idea that over the past month, people have gotten more concerned about inflation. And they certainly can't, there would be no way for anyone to assume that the federal government is doing anything about inflation right now. In fact, I think the thing that they don't understand, that folks like Russell Vogt and Republican lawmakers don't understand, is that I don't think there's the same hostility towards the federal government that they think there is.
No.
And federal government workers. And on top of which, they, I think the idea of people losing their jobs willy-nilly, literally willy-nilly, creates anxiety amongst other people. I don't, you know, if you see your neighbor lose their job, if you see two people on your block lose their job, you start to get worried about your job. If you start hearing about people losing their job, 1,500 at, you know, at the VA and 1,500 there and 1,500 there, you start to worry that maybe your job is not so safe, even if it's just being done randomly by some billionaire.
Right. I mean, this might be just a good time to show that map of like when they're cutting this federal workforce, how destabilizing it is. Right, Sam, if you agree here, just the Dana Bash quick clip here on CNN showing the map of the states that voted for Donald Trump and how many people work for the federal government in those states.
As you kind of digest that, there's something else that our team put together, and I think that this is really critical for people to understand. Look at this map. That is a map of where federal workers are who are living in the states that Trump won. Look at that number. It's almost 1 million people. So yes, it's own Washington, drain the swamp, all the things, But the reason why we are starting to see and hear more concern and even backlash around the country, and even from Republican House members and senators, is because these are their constituents.
Can we just keep that map up for just a second there so we can see it? Nearly 130K federal workers in Texas. I mean, that's a very populous state. But Oklahoma, 41,000 people? As you say? I mean, North Dakota, Matt, less than 1 million people living in that state, right? If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, probably 750,000 less. I checked.
These
5,600?
People have families, they have friends, the anxiety spreads throughout. Remember, on top of this, you can lay on top of this all the cuts to the grants and whatever it is.
Oh, yeah.
We Alabama, what was it? University of Alabama, was it?
Yep.
Like the biggest employer in the state relies heavily on NIH grants.
University of North Dakota gets a lot of NIH grants.
And they're gone away. People are freaking out.
Right. I mean, look at Georgia there. That's a really important state. Almost 80,000 federal employees there. Off the top of my head, I believe there are many FAA workers down there, but I could be wrong.
And 20,000 West Virginia, can they afford to just eat 20,000 layoffs?
Yeah.
The amazing thing is that I still remember when we were told the government doesn't create jobs.
Oh, sorry. It was the CDC in Atlanta.
And
That's where it is.
Think about what's
Yes.
happening. The government is taking money through progressive taxation from billionaires and millionaires and employing people across all of these different states to do jobs for society. And we're told that's waste?
Yeah.
Folks can't hear the clips while they're on the phone. We've got to fix that. Calling from a 585 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hello, is this me?
Yes, it is you. Who is this?
Hi, this is Cal. I'm calling from Rochester, New York.
Okay, Cal from Rochester. What's on your mind?
Well, I wanted to talk about a little bit about my story with Medicaid.
Okay.
And healthcare in general. So I was diagnosed with a genetic disorder when I was just starting high school. This would have been around 2000.
Okay.
So I lived in North Carolina. That's where I grew up. And that was a state, this is before the Affordable Care Act. So already, that was back when pre-existing were a thing. And by the time I became an adult, I already had pre-existing.
Okay, I just want to, because I don't know, there are people who listen in the show who don't really understand what that means as much, because and I've said this for years, the really genuinely effective part of the ACA, in addition to the expansion of Medicaid, was the patient protection part of the ACA. The ACA part, the cost, not so great. But the patient protection part, pre-existing conditions. So you have this genetic disorder that you find out when you're in high school. You're covered under your parents' insurance at that point. But once you age out, because now you age out at 26, but then I think it was like when you stopped becoming a dependent. So it was probably like around 18 or 21. What happened to you then?
Right, exactly. Pre-existing is that you could be denied outright any coverage for that issue if you aren't, those of you who aren't familiar with what that means. So basically the biggest part that you need care for, the insurance companies could be like, well, that was before you got care. It's too expensive. We won't cover it. So when I started searching for coverage, they quoted me, I want to say this is $600, and I'm working at a fast food place. That's more than my rent for this essential coverage. And at the same time, I found out also I had a chronic illness, which is Crohn's disease. So that was another thing that they wouldn't cover, because that was before I started making calls too. Around 2010, because my genetic disorder is pretty rare and actually makes me chromosomally intersex, I don't have the typical XY formation. I have like an X and an O, so basically just one. For those curious, I have to educate a lot of my healthcare providers, actually. It's an interesting thing. Yes, I went up to the NIH for a study around 2010. They paid for my flight up there. I think I was there a couple of days, and they did a bunch of surveys. They looked at my heart because one of the things that could happen is the valve can dissect if you have my genetic disorder, which is called Turner syndrome. So all of these screens and studies they did are still used by my healthcare providers today. All of this was free. It would have been who knows how much if I would have had to do these necessary things out of pocket. Everyone there was amazing. They were so kind. And I mentioned to them, I went up there for my genetic disorder. I mentioned I was struggling with Crohn's. The medication I was on wasn't helping. I was literally, while working, would have to take breaks to go sit in a corner because I was hurting. Right. So they sent me home with medicine. They packed it as much as they could fill it into my suitcase. And this would have been more than $1,000 worth of medicine they just gave me to go home with, to give me some time to, to prepare. Because these medicines were also, I think, if I remember right, a monthly dose of these pills was $600 at the time. So fast forward years, I end up in Rochester, New York, because I had friends here, and I was like, well, healthcare is not great. They told me that this was a good place to come to, and I did. And I ended up in the ER because I was in and out. I got taken on by a GI immediately. I got on Medicaid. They started me on a new medicine. The GI I'd seen in North Carolina wouldn't tell me about other medication options. He flatly told me I could not afford them.
Jeez.
So then my health improved drastically on this new medicine. I ended up having to get surgery to repair the years of scarring because I wasn't being properly treated. But now I'm basically symptom-free for the most part. And it's all thanks to Medicaid, really. But I've been seeing conversations about the NIH, and I don't think a lot of people understand what they do or what it's like to interface with them as someone with a health condition.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate it. Appreciate hearing your story. Thank you for telling us.
Yes, thank you for letting me share. And you guys are awesome. I'm a pretty new listener, and it's great to be able to have this space.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for calling.
Thank you.
Back to the phones. Calling from a 509 area code. Who's this?
Hey, Sam, it's Ronald Reagan.
Ronald Reagan. Long time no talk to.
I know. How are you?
Well, fine.
Great.
Hey, Reagan.
Oh, hi. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing well. How are you?
You're a lot more enthusiastic to talk to Emma. All right, go ahead.
I'm good, thanks. Well, I mean, huge caveat, everything's on fire. But, well, first of all, are you going to run for Senate, yes or no?
I'm not going to listen. Right now, my job is to be the host of this show, and I'm going to focus all of my.
I'll see you out the trail.
Focus all my energy on that right now.
Okay, strong yes vibes from that answer. So, real quick, on Ukraine, my wife is from Ukraine, and she went in November. She went back to. She had to bury her father, who passed away. So it was not like an easy trip to make, but she went with her mom, and they were pretty sure, it's safe in Kyiv. It's very well protected, which is true. But I think it was a really traumatic experience. There was, in the week and a half she was there, maybe one night where they weren't, woken up by, they have a series of alerts when there's drones, when there's ballistic missiles, you can hear things being intercepted. You've got to go down to the subway or go into the hallway of your apartment building. And so, I mean, the attitude in Ukraine, I think, has definitely, I can't speak for Ukraine, all Ukrainians, but when you see in the polls that there's more and more openness to negotiations and concessions, I mean, people are exhausted. It's in a lot of ways, it's a psychological warfare. You have a city of millions of people, and people aren't sleeping. So for going on three years now, people are not really getting sleep, and then you're supposed to just go to work and act like nothing's going on, and that's really, really hard. So. But to the extent like you guys need to talk about it or should talk about it. I mean, I don't like lectures like that. But when I called about this a couple of years ago, one of the things I mentioned was that Putin had just given a speech where he talked about how in the West, kids go to school and change their gender. And it sounded, I said at the time, it sounded like a Tucker monologue, because Tucker was still in the air at the time. And really what it sounds like now is Trump's campaign speeches.
Yeah.
And I think there is, and some people took that to mean like we should fight in Ukraine to protect trans kids. And really my point was there's a broad global right-wing movement, and there are ties between something stupid like Joe Rogan, talking about, trans kids in sports, and Trump and Elon and this other thing. So, I mean, the other thing being
you're right
Putin
about
and
that.
the right.
Matt Duss had a piece just the other day. I don't know where it was that I read it, where he was making this point.
I think that you were also on point about this in a way that perhaps some folks, on the left liberal side were slow to catch up with, but it's been the vision of Steve Bannon too, like the Orban style politics that really, and I think then you have the tech bros with their anarcho-capitalist thing, with Millet wanting to merge those two visions. But when it comes to Putin saying all that stuff about, that echoes the right here, I think that vote on Ukraine at the United Nations was very scary and interesting and bolsters your point, where you have Russia, Israel, and the United States voting against that resolution together. China abstaining. You see that your vision, your hypothesis basically coming together, where under Trump's leadership and then Putin and then Netanyahu, this is I call it the axis of aggressors, or basically the right-wing bullies coming together, and that is the coalition that Trump is seeking.
The other thing, thank you. I totally agree. And I think to Matt's point, you would think, well, Ukrainians should really like Biden because of all the assistance and the help. But the truth is, maybe there's some that feel that way, but I know a lot of the people I've talked to were just frustrated more than anything else, because literally every step along the way there was sort of needless feet dragging for different types of aid, different types of systems or planes or whatever. It felt like, like Matt said, if you wanted to fight to win, those decisions, and I know it's complicated because of the N word, right? But the nukes, but it didn't, a lot of the feet dragging didn't seem to make a lot of sense or to help the situation. And it did, I mean, if you wanted to put a tinfoil hat on, you would say, it seems like there was a decision to let them float along without giving them the tools to actually make decisive gains or victory.
There are two things. One, it is quite apparent to me that, or was at the time, that the Biden administration did not think that, under they overestimated Russia's ability to invade and conquer within like a week. I'm convinced they thought, I mean, you remember all the warnings, they weren't sending weapons. And it took like really a week before the rhetoric changed and people realized, like, wait a second, maybe Russia's a little bit more of a paper tiger than we thought. And then the second issue is what Clinton said at the time, which was that it is in the United States' best interest to just let this be an extended war of attrition, because you could defeat Russia quickly, I mean theoretically, right, and drive them out, and by showing some type of, like, I guess, overwhelming force, or you could just sort of drag Russia into an extended quagmire that slowly bleeds them. And I think from the United States perspective, if they, this is what their strategic, vision was. I mean, I think that's what it feels like to me.
Yeah. And I think, tragically, I think Putin's going to get the relief he's been seeking. And, if you follow the situation closely, they're not in a great situation. So to the extent you wanted to sort of bleed them out and have a slow progressive victory, there's an argument that you could be somewhat close in that they're relying on North Korean troops and they're very poorly armed and equipped. And so the idea that you would pursue that strategy for 3 years and then, we elect our own fascist who's basically
that's the thing, is that Biden, I don't know if there was ever someone who ever had a greater estimation of themselves than Joe Biden relative to his abilities. Biden thought, like, I'm gonna take care of this in February.
Basically, yeah.
Biden right now, Biden 6 months ago, even, or a year ago, he's like, okay, in February is when I start to put the hammer down and we accelerate this thing. And, I'm convinced, it was quite clear that there was not going to be any type of resolution to this or any fundamental change in U.S. policy until after the election. And it was either going to go one way or the other way.
And I think Biden
went the wrong way.
Hurt his negotiating position because the United States had an opportunity to reassert soft power in the wake of Donald Trump's chaos, and Biden bogging us down once again in the genocide in Gaza, I think hurt his negotiating position there, or his ability to I don't know, make this come to an end in any real way. And then the question is if Trump and the Republicans decide to cut off Zelensky for whatever petty reason Trump is saying, do they go to the European parties to seek weaponry? And is there an opportunity for other, like, right-wing European leaders or whatever, as we're seeing the global far right have success in some European countries? Do they start to dip their toe in here? And that's some of the chaos that Trump could cause, right? With basically taking Russia's side here.
Right. Yeah. And just to close it out, I guess on a happy note, sarcasm. I don't know that we're totally prepared for what it could look like to have a shutdown of U.S. support. If they shut down Starlink like they're threatening, if they stop providing, the air defense missiles and things like that. The bombs and the explosions that are being heard all night long in Kyiv are not, for the most part, hitting their target. There's still debris and things like that, and occasionally something will get through. But there's a possibility for it to get. It's already ugly, but there's a real potential for it to get very bad. So anyhow, thanks for all you do, and appreciate you guys.
That was a happy note.
Appreciate you.
Good job.
Yeah, bye.
Bye.
I mean, that's the one thing is I think I've heard internally Trump people talk about Ukraine is they don't want it to be his Afghanistan and tank his numbers like Afghanistan did for Joe.
Although it might be in Afghanistan in a different sense, like, right, in terms of trying to use Afghanistan in the way that we did to bleed the Soviets. But that was the vision that Hillary Clinton accidentally said out loud. It's not that Hillary was in power, but given the fact that she was Secretary of State, this is indicative of how these people think within the national security establishment.
Can I also just push back on one thing about the Afghanistan? Yeah. I do not believe that Joe Biden's poll numbers dropped because of Afghanistan. Right. It was because, from a legislative perspective, from dealing with domestic things, he was dilly-dallying around with all the Republicans and moved from, like, we're getting stuff done for the American people mode into, look how I am bringing together the country, i.e., these 50 people who are in Washington.
Right. Gave them an opportunity to catch their breath and got like a 9th of Build Back Better pass in the end. Complete outrage.
Calling from a 619 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hi, this is Max calling from South Carolina.
Max from South Carolina. What's on your mind?
Yeah, I just wanted to give a bit of a ground sit rep for the LGBT organization that's happening in South Carolina.
Sure.
Quick signal boost for the Alliance for Full Acceptance. Their website is affa-sc.org.
Whoa.
They are organizing.
So tell me that again.
Yep. affa-sc.org.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we've got that.
They're a nonprofit. Thank you. They're a nonprofit in South Carolina, and they are responding in a big way to the inauguration. We have a supermajority of Republicans in the state house, so it's looking a little dire, but I do have a good sort of optimistic report of a recent training that I went to, Advocacy 101. We had about 30 people show up Saturday. This was just this Saturday at 10 a.m. to learn about the state legislative process and to be empowered and to, kind of get engaged with the state-level politics. And the sense of optimism that I walked away with is that state-level lawmakers will respond to the pressure that we put on them. And March 4th at 9 a.m., there's going to be an event at the State House in Columbia. That's going to be a public hearing on the total abortion ban. So if you had to guess what a supermajority of Republicans are up to in the state of South Carolina,
right.
Most of the legislative agenda is cookie cutter Heritage Foundation stuff, which of course is scary, but the people who gave the training definitely instilled a sense of optimism and empowerment to us by saying that a lot of state lawmakers are about 5 to 10 phone calls from their constituents away from changing their mind on a bill. And they're going to do an Advocacy 201 training. If you go to their website, you can register. It's all for free. They're a nonprofit. And if you're in South Carolina, they're also doing all of this training hybrid, so you can attend virtually if you're not. They tend to organize in the Charleston area. But yeah, anyways, I just wanted to say thank you for covering what you cover. Thank you for taking my call. And to all of my LGBT people in South Carolina, stay strong, organize, and call your representative.
I have a question for you. Do you know if you can call in there if you're not from South Carolina? Like, it's just as a resource on how to organize in general? Because, this is the thing that people don't, I think, fully appreciate is, particularly on a state level, how much influence you can have. But even on a national level, depending on what the issue is, a lot of these representatives in particular feel vulnerable, and the amount of people that they hear from is so much less than people assume. And I would just say, as an analogy, you can see people online on Twitter who with big followers will engage with one person who's got like 3 followers or whatnot, you know, somebody's gotten under their skin, I should say. Let me put it this way, right? Because I don't want to make it sound like you should that, but somebody's gotten under their skin. Like they're having like a meaningful argument with them, and they're like changing their behavior because of that one person. That dynamic exists in humans, and all of these lawmakers are humans, and they don't, you know, if the squeaky wheel gets the oil, you know, for the most part.
JJ writes in, AOC is advocating for an app called 5 Call to give scripts and advice for calling your elected officials. I've heard great things about 5 Calls. That's one place to start if you want to start making some calls.
That was a Trump 45 original. I'm pretty sure 5 Calls came around then.
Oh.
Commandeered.
All right. Well, appreciate the call.
Sam, what was your question?
Well, I want to know if people could call in if they're not, but I guess they can ask on there, right? I mean, you can sign up. We just scroll up on that site, Matt. People can ask if they can just join. If it,
they can donate. You can take action.
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. Well, thanks for the call.
Yeah. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
You know, that reminds me of a good part of Ta-Nehisi Coates' recent book that wasn't emphasized a lot in the press, but there was a teacher in South Carolina that got, I think, fired or suspended or some sort of action because she taught one of his books. And he went down to the school board meeting, and they showed up in large numbers. They were expecting like maybe a lot of protests, but they completely swamped anybody who was against it. And I just have a lot of respect for people in states that are very conservative showing up like that.
Right. I mean, especially on LGBTQ issues, I know somebody doing work on that in a red state whose passport, they tried to renew it so they would have an updated gender marker during the Trump administration, sent it in after the inauguration. Last I checked with this person, their passport was still on hold, and sometimes they're just like, my question was, well, can you get your original document back so you at the very least have a passport that maybe they say you can't renew it with an M, but you'll have the old one that may be expired, right? Even if it doesn't last you through the whole Trump administration. Last I checked, they just didn't receive it back. Right. And then we had this viral story with Hunter Schafer, this wonderful actress from Euphoria and Cuckoo and all these other great films who...
Euphoria is a movie.
It's a show.
Okay.
Close enough. But very popular show, and she is the best thing about it. The first season is great because she incorporated she wrote a lot of it. And a lot of it is about her experience growing up trans. She grew up in North Carolina and was a part of was a plaintiff in, I think, an ACLU lawsuit about the bathroom bills. Her activism is a huge part of what she does. She was also a part of Jewish Voice for Peace protests unrelated to this, but like, Hunter Schafer's the best of us right now, and she had her passport stolen at one point and had to reapply for one. And as one of the most high-profile trans, actors in the country, to have this happen to her, it's just a gut check.
Hello, Internet. I don't really post much these days, but I had a bit of a harsh reality check today and felt like it's important to share with whoever is listening. So I'm sure most of us remember on, I think, the first day of Trump's presidency, he signed an executive order to declare only 2 genders recognized by the state, male and female, assigned at birth. And as a result of this, which I wrote down because I want to get it right, the Bureau of Consular Affairs has frozen passport applications requesting a gender marker change or renewals or new applications with a gender marker differing from an applicant's gender assigned at birth. So my initial reaction to this, because our president, is a lot of talk, was like, I'll believe it when I see it. And today, I saw it on my new passport, male. So Now, to specify, my gender markers were first changed in my teens when I first got my driver's license, and then passports following. All have been female since then. Hasn't really been a problem. However, last year when I was filming in Barcelona, our car got broken into and my bag got stolen, and inside of that was my passport, which was supposed to last me up until my 30s. And so I got an emergency passport, which was very simple at the time. It's basically just a copy of my old passport, but temporary and only supposed to be used within the year. So as soon as I got back to the States, I had to get this fixed and get it replaced with a real proper passport, which I went to the Federal Passport Agency today in LA and did. I've had to do this one time before. No part of the process was different. I filled everything out just like I normally would. I put female. And when it was picked up today and I opened it up, they had changed the marker to male. And I'm not making this post to fearmonger or to create drama or receive consolation. I don't need it. But I do think it's worth posting to sort of note the reality of the situation and that it is actually happening. And I was shocked. I was shocked because I don't know. I just didn't think it was actually going to happen.
She has a longer explanation where she talks about it more, but yeah, this is what's happening. I mean, it's insane, and it feels like people.
Was there an existing record that she was trans?
Yeah.
So she goes into it and saying she didn't change her birth certificate, and her hypothesis is that they're cross-checking the birth certificates, and that's the only way she can think of that she was
identified that way. And she's also one of the most high-profile trans celebrities in the country and is super popular with younger folks.
I've never heard of her.
Yeah. Well, Laverne Cox is another person. Shout out to her.
I know Laverne Cox
because she likes our show.
Well, no, because I saw Orange is the New Black was the last show I think I saw on television.
Yes. You're really up to date here.
That's a newer show, right? When was the last time that was on?
Maybe a decade ago.
Yeah, it was popular 10 years ago. But she's just, I mean, first of all, I admire her activism in a variety of different areas. But this is important because it outs Hunter Schafer is somebody who's probably has a lot of money as an actress, maybe not a lot, but she's going to be comfortable and perhaps everybody in her industry knows that she's trans most likely, and when they cast her, they're likely aware of this. But how this really affects people is if you're not famous and you're applying for a job and you need to give a government document proving who you are. This outs you to your employer. This is a privacy violation. It outs you to your employer. And the Trump administration has openly said, we're going to allow employers, say you're a landlord, right? You want to rent and you need to provide government documentation, and it outs you as a trans person. They may not rent you. They may not hire you. There's already high rates of discrimination for LGBTQ plus people. This makes it even more difficult because it shows potential employers, shows potential landlords, or if you're trying to buy a home, this person is trans, so they know automatically, okay, I can discriminate against this person. That's what they're trying to do.
Also, I would imagine there are countries where there's, this country's, getting there, but there's, significant hostility to trans people.
Right.
And
all the lawsuits
you
are being
show up
dropped.
in that, that border crossing or, customs or whatever it is, that also creates an issue.
Right. She said she was abroad for when she was filming when her passport was stolen, and this outs her if she were to go abroad again, no matter where she goes. So, yeah, it's deeply depressing and disgusting, but this is where we're at. And Project 2025, for all the folks that wanted to downplay it, the attacks on trans people and LGBTQ plus people were a big part of what the promises were. And the Project 2025 tracker already shows that they're over 50% of the way through their anti-LGBTQ measures, which include rescinding Title IX rules that strengthened sexual assault and discrimination cases, removing words about gender identity and sexual orientation from federal rules, reversing prohibitions on healthcare discrimination based on gender identity. That more and more the Trump administration is implementing what they already promised.
A couple of people are IMing to say, getting there. I believe that the majority of American people, just as a cultural matter, are not as anti-trans as the rolling back of civil rights would suggest. That was my point.
Right.
In that moment, I do not believe, entering it. Maybe this is more aspirational. My sense is that a customs agent at a U.S. international airport is going to be, on balance, less hostile to a trans person coming in than in many countries around the world. That was really my point.
Yeah.
I believe me. I am aware of both, like, what is happening here in terms of civil rights and also, from a cultural standpoint. Calling from a 972 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Yes, hello. Is this Sam Seder on the Majority Report?
Yes.
My God, I've been calling and calling because this is Milo Yiannopoulos. I've been calling because I hear you want to talk to me about one Timothy Poole.
Sure. Yes, please do. Tell us.
I've been on that show too many times to count, but what are your questions? Please get on with it. I've got to go to my free doctor's appointment because I live in the UK.
What is this whole story about right-wing shows faking it until they make it? What did you mean by that?
Well, as you can tell by my accent, everything is fake around here. Whenever you start to get to the brass tacks of it, as for Tim, that beard is drawn on. I've been close to it, as have you. That beard is drawn on. I believe this is a young teenage boy.
You didn't even see that. You weren't even there. You weren't even there. You didn't even see that clip.
No, I saw it. I actually live on the compound. He lets me live there, and he brings me out when he wants a bit of fun.
What did you think of that compound?
And by that, I mean strong arguments. I don't mean whatever you've got thinking, whatever you're thinking, Sam Seder.
Milo Yiannopoulos, you sound suspiciously like Katharine Hepburn.
Well, I've spent I've spent a lot of time with Katharine. What other questions do you have about young people?
I think that's it.
I just like the transatlantic accent that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah, it didn't really work. Anyway, this is Jake from Dallas. Thank you for.
What is that? Was it a machine?
Yeah, I take a lot of my cues from one Ryan Murphy Brown, one RM, and so I get a.
So you have.
I thought I had more in the tank for that one, but I don't listen to Milo enough.
Yeah, I know. I could tell you didn't do your homework on that as much as you should have.
Yeah. One more thing, as an English teacher, I just want to suggest that. Actually, I had one other thing, which is that I really like whenever that was so satisfying watching the clips of all of the lawmakers get yelled at by their constituents at those town halls. Boy, howdy, that was awesome. Put it in my veins. That was incredible.
Yeah.
And I liked what the lady screamed at the very end, where she was like, "Go do your job." because I think a lot of these lawmakers, particularly ones that don't actually have a clear vision for the future of the country and are just doing ideological things, they don't want to do their job. They're so lazy. Like, they would much rather have this South African immigrant come and do their job for them. And I think, like, the more that we can hammer that of just like, look, we elected you to do a job and you are gleefully letting someone else who is unqualified and unelected do that job. I don't know. It could be something to kind of drive home, especially with a lot of Republican lawmakers.
Well, I think just putting these lawmakers on notice that you can see that they're not doing their job.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, they would much rather somebody else do it. That's why it's happening this way.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, they have control over both legislative bodies. And it wouldn't be hard for them to find a spare, Democratic vote here or there, I would imagine, for some programs that they want to cut. But they don't want to cut.
Yeah.
They don't want to do that. They want to, like, waste and abuse.
So much reading,
Waste and
Sam.
abuse.
It's so much reading and having to think and talk to people and
but also having to own it, having to own the policy that they would have to cut, of touching that third rail, of cutting Medicare, of cutting Social Security, of cutting even Medicaid, and then having to go back to their constituents that benefit from these services and own it. I mean, that's what's threatening to them about this heightened protest time where people are actually reacting, is that they may be held accountable. I mean, if this keeps going on and a federal worker runs in some of these districts, I don't care if they're plus R17. It's in play. It's in play.
Yep.
And I'm for real about these midterms. Like, that is going to be a real issue for them if this continues to happen. So
let's hope.
Appreciate the call.
One final thing. As an English teacher, I have to have everybody read their the Parable of the Sower by Octavia Butler, if you haven't yet. It's heartbreaking, it's gut-wrenching, but spiritually, I think it speaks to the moment. Thank you, guys.
Parable of the Sower?
Parable of the Sower by Octavia E. Butler, yes.
Okay, I will do it.
Really beautiful, but I've taken so much of your time already, as has Milo. I kicked him out, so he's good. We're good there.
Appreciate
Thank you
the
guys so
call.
much.
Thank you.
Mike from Texas. I know an RM Brown bit when I hear it. The Massive. I'm waiting for someone to point out their rep is waste inefficiency in one of those meetings. Detective Dubois, Tim Pool apparently had a kid. What? Well, it sounded like that when I was there.
He didn't really answer.
He has the bedrooms for it.
David from the Bay. Sam, any word on when your Jubilee video is coming out? I think now, like, they pushed it. Wasn't it like originally supposed to be like March 3rd?
Q3 2027.
Yeah. No, it's like March 12th.
Why?
I don't know. I don't know. I think they maybe like they shot it on film and they're editing it on film. I don't know. I don't know. It feels like it should be
IMAX.
Yeah, right.
It should be out by now. Let's check in with these guys. Doge dividend checks is the title of this PBD podcast. I got news for you. There ain't going to be Doge dividend checks. Now, what there might be is tax cuts for Patrick Bet-David, but 40% already of the contracts that Doge has canceled have zero savings because they've already been paid out.
Right.
They've canceled. It's like you have
a contract for $10 million that has been over a 5-year period. They're saying it's $10 million in savings, but they've spent $8 million of it already.
Yeah,
right.
Except for in this instance, it sounds like they spent $10 million.
Right.
And they just canceled the contract. So we paid for it, but we're just not getting the full. It's like you bought a year of Majority Report, and you decide 6 months in, I'm not listening anymore.
Yeah.
It doesn't save you any money. I think actually we do prorate when we return, but we have better deals.
Well, we are the efficient.
The point being,
show.
They've got to make it like there's actually something going on other than the destruction of the administrative state. That's the only thing they care about. If they cared about taxpayer money, they wouldn't be giving huge tax breaks to billionaires who hoard money. Go ahead.
Oh, and this is, by the way, about Bolsonaro.
Next story, and you'll see why I'm going into this next story. Okay, so Brazil's Bolsonaro, okay, charged over alleged coup that included a plan to poison Lula. Okay,
Man, oh, wow.
Yes,
Damn.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a James Bond film.
So, prosecutor again. This is AP News. Brazil's prosecutor general formally charged President Bolsonaro. Why don't they put the guy's name? They should put the guy's name. Bolsonaro with attempting a coup, alleging he agreed to a plan called Green and Yellow Dagger to poison President Luiz Lula da Silva and assassinate Supreme Court Justice Alexandre de Moraes. Bolsonaro's defense called the accusations dismaying and indignating, while his son, Senator Flavio Bolsonaro, dismissed the indictment as empty and politically motivated. The indictment, based on manuscripts, digital files, spreadsheets, and message exchanges, described a coordinated effort to overturn Bolsonaro's 2022 election loss by pressuring military leaders, drafting legal cover, and inciting riots. The Supreme Court will decide whether to proceed with a trial where Bolsonaro could face up to 20 years in prison, up to 38 years, if convicted of attempting a coup. So now, you hear this story. While I'm there, I want to learn about what the system's like.
So just to preface this, he goes in a little bit on his trip to actually interview Bolsonaro, like in the days prior to that announcement.
Oh, okay. So he's just come back from an interview with Bolsonaro.
And he's talking about Brasilia here.
Which she was there just 2 months ago. We stayed at that hotel. And we went to the House, Congress. They walked us around Senate. They walked us around everywhere. We had a chance to see everything that was going on in Brazil. Interviews coming out on Monday. And while we're talking, here's what we learn about Brazil. Watch this. And why this applies to America. Americans, it's so important to realize this. Do you know, oh my God, do you know if Trump, his greatest accomplishment that he did on his first term, you know what it was? Flipping 3 seats.
That's right.
When he flipped 3 seats, you can call it luck, you can call it whatever. We were debating this, Brandon, a power, hand of God. You can call it whatever you want. Obama had 8 years. He flipped 1 seat. Trump had 4 years, flipped 3 seats, and one of the years was COVID year.
Okay, all right.
And he flipped 3 seats.
He's talking about the Supreme Court because he's leaving out the part so far where Bolsonaro wasn't just in the plot trying to poison Lula. There was also a plot to assassinate via firearm one of the Supreme Court justices. So this is what he's getting at here. So he's erasing the fact that Mitch McConnell just basically refused to use the Senate procedures that had been allowed prior to that to confirm Merrick Garland.
Well, he wouldn't even hold a hearing.
He wouldn't even hold a hearing, which is caused the Democrats, right? They changed the rules after that, right?
Well, he wouldn't hold. No. He just decided he was going to break every tradition. He claimed 9.5 months out from the election that you should not hold a hearing for a new Supreme Court justice. You should wait until after the election. However, they confirmed Amy Coney Barrett, the third of the seats, 3 weeks.
Right.
Before the election.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg had died right in the fall before the 2020 election.
Yep. And just to note, President Bolsonaro was already tied to a political assassination of Marielle Franco in 2019. So where there's a lot of smoke here.
Yeah.
So wait a sec. So he's saying he amazingly flipped 3 seats. First of all, Mitch McConnell did it.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
You're talking about Supreme Court seats. Okay, gotcha.
Now here we have how many seats? 9. When he flipped at the end of his term, what was the number? Was it 6-3, Tom, or was it 5-4 at the end of his term?
Biden?
No, conservatives to liberals.
Yes. No, I think it was 6-3.
I think it was 6-3. Yes. Exactly. So he was at 6-3.
Is this a fucking politics show? Are you serious?
You also don't talk about the Supreme Court. That's why everyone's confused, because flipping seats is when you're referring to the
I thought he was saying, wait a second, did 3 people switch parties?
Obama apparently only flipped 1 seat in 8 years on the Democratic side.
Flip a seat. How do you flip the seat?
Yeah. I mean, you flip it when the Supreme Court justice flips right into a
I assassinated 3 Supreme Court justices and put in a new one. Okay.
So this is what Bolsonaro's trying to do by flipping a seat, flipping,
what he
the
should have done.
trigger.
Liberals.
Yes. No, I think it was 6-3. There was
I
only
think it
3
was
left.
6-3.
Yes.
Exactly.
Oh my
so he
God.
was at 6-3. The next term, if you guys remember this, what did they try to do to Trump?
Pack the cords.
Do you remember? No, Kamala Harris talked about pack the cords. But do you remember when Colorado was the first state to come out and say what? And you're
We're
like, Pat,
removing
this
him
is a
from
big
the
deal. This is a
ballot.
big deal.
Off the ballot.
We
That's
want to
right.
remove
Took
him
him
off the ballot. Then other states started coming in and saying what? Yeah, we're going to do it too. Yeah, we're going to do it too. Yeah, we're going to do it too. And then who said, pump the brakes? Not going to happen.
Supreme
Who?
Court.
Supreme Court Justice.
Yeah.
By the way, what would have happened if it was 6-3 the other way around? If it was 6-3 the other way around, Trump's not president today. That's right. So let me explain to you. If it's 6-3 the other way around, Trump may be in jail today. His kids may be in jail today. Everybody may be in jail today. While I'm in Brazil, you ready for this? 2016, Trump wins election. They call Bolsonaro the Trump Brazil. He wins in 2018. They've both been married 3 times. They both have 3 kids from their first wife, 1 from the second, 1 from the third. Both of them. Okay.
Pause it for 1 second.
Bolsonaro.
Did Bolsonaro also be accused credibly of rape by his one of his ex-wives?
I wouldn't want to say authoritatively no.
I'm just curious.
But you
I
can't
just want to
have
see how
all the
consistent
parallels.
the parallels.
It seemed. Did they have the same moon sign? I mean, honestly.
Also, like, tried coups. Like,
Also, did Donald Trump? Okay, so if Biden is Lula in this instance, although he's more like Bernie, if Biden is like Lula in this instance, like this would have required Biden to have previously been president, right? And for him to have gone to prison on trumped up charges that a conservative judge had engaged in, trumping them up and not Donald Trump, but making them into more than what they were, and then that being disproven and him leaving office.
they're saying that, yeah, it's like lawfare, which Lula was actually imprisoned and spent
Yes.
significant amount of time for, that was supported by our government corruptly. Now he was exonerated, like you said, won back into office.
How is he making Bolsonaro the victim here when Lula was literally in prison for lawfare?
And the way that they reacted to the assassination news when PBD read it up top is they said like, wow, and like a Bond film.
Yeah.
Like that's an
Cool.
assassination attempt. It's
Right.
cool, you crazy.
They're telling on themselves. It's like the conservatives who are so wowed by the beeper attack by Israel. It's like, wow, you guys are little children, but keep going.
And Trump. Bolsonaro was in the military for 13 years as a captain. He went and became a Congress for 27 years, of
Great.
which the last 4 years was with his son. Then he ran for president. Do you know how much money he had to run for president? $1 million when he ran against the left. Do you know in the Brazilian media, what they do there is anybody that runs, they decide how much time you get every day. Every morning and every night, they allot you time to go up and talk to the people. Globo is the biggest media. I think they got 39% of all the viewership of all the 9, but Globo's like their biggest one. Do you know his opponent, who was the leader, I think, the Workers' Party, a guy named Haddad? Okay, Rob, if you can pull up Haddad, tall, good-looking guy who's a full-on socialist.
I'm sorry. I need to correct the record here. Like Bolsonaro was running against Lula. Lula was leading him in the polls. Lula got imprisoned on charges that have now been disproven, and that's how Bolsonaro won. So it's like, oh, this David and the Goliath story who only had $1 million, and then he's citing the rules in Brazil, which are superior to ours. They can't run negative ads, and they do have a lot of time where they can speak to the people. These are things that are actually kind of sensible, as opposed to in our country where you can have a billionaire buy an election.
I'm going to skip a little bit ahead. Do we just get Brian Callen talking about Inspector General and then concluding that actually this is the coup attempt?
$236 billion. That is, I believe, 1/4 of the defense's budget. Okay, so there is, and that's just Biden. So we're going to find that that's chicken feet compared to what they're going to find out.
Again, by the way, this thing, while we're there, before we go, they tell us, when we went with a team of 9, they said, you need an international lawyer. They don't want him to speak. They don't want him to talk about anything. He's not allowed to talk about anything. You know, he was the only president in the world that didn't get a COVID shot.
What?
He's the only president in the world. I mean, we can't count Tanzania and some of these smaller.
Yeah.
He's the only president in the world that refused to take the COVID shot. I love him.
And he's very popular still in Brazil.
Popular. He can't even walk outside, guys. He can't go anywhere.
And so this is a form of a coup, isn't it?
Oh, it's a form of a coup. He's not in power. He also tried to stay in power. Can we just?
So he was in speaking of the not vaccinated, he was in the hospital like half of all the time we're speaking of with different.
Right.
Ailments.
It was a big when they had a meeting. We thought like, oh yeah,
with COVID too.
I think that's when that clip of Michael laughing so hard. That's exactly what it was.
Yeah, it was. Yep.
He's not the picture of health Bolsonaro. He's in the hospital more than he's not. I'm sorry. I sent a 24-second thing cold. I have no idea if this is funny, but like apparently Bolsonaro gave PBD a gift in this exchange, which he showed off.
One of the questions
in this
was it a Bolsonaro coin, a meme coin?
It's a coin.
One of the questions I asked Bolsonaro, because he's very good friends with PK, I said, hey, man, you're born in Senna's birthday, but you're a fan of PK and you guys are friends. So how do you handle this? His answer is funny. And he gave me a coin at the end. This coin is only given to 5 people. Rob, who were the 5 names he said about this coin?
Putin, Trump,
Orban, Millet,
Orban, and you.
And me.
PBD.
He gave these 5 coins.
Wow.
Oh, what a high honor. He gave those are the only time.
What coin? Like who has like
Bolsonaro
challenge coin?
Who has coins?
At least it's a physical coin.
Yeah, it's not a meme coin.
Like
Sounds like an objective interviewer.
Yeah, sounds like somebody Brazil, if they're like guarding against a coup attempt, might not want to have that guy be the media representative. Like I there's all this stuff about don't suppress the speech of like Rumble or whatever in Brazil. I think nation states have a right to stand up with media companies from foreign countries that are attempting to coup monger in their country.
Yeah.
All right, let's take one last call. Calling from a 313 area code. Who's this? Where are you calling from?
Hey, is this me?
Yes.
Hey, this is Nicholas calling from Michigan. Well, long-time listener, first-time caller. I just wanted to point out on the first half of the show that you guys talked about Medicaid, and I wanted to really emphasize how important it is, more particularly Medicaid in Louisiana. I currently live in Michigan, but I moved to Louisiana about 2 weeks before COVID hit. And to save a long-winded story about my healthcare journey, I had about 8 or 9 appointments that started off with me thinking I was having a mental breakdown that ended up with me having bone cancer. Oh, wow. I had a tumor I had a tumor on my skull, and I was working at the time, but I was working 1099 in the state of Louisiana. So I don't believe there was record of me actually working. Maybe there was some sort of allowance due to COVID that allowed me to be on Medicaid. But Medicaid saved my life, and if it weren't, it shouldn't take something like that in someone's life to show them how to advocate for their own health. It took that for me to really have to learn the ins and outs of the medical system in America. And it shouldn't take that for people, because a lot of people, when they're going through health concerns, they don't really have the headspace to even do that. And on top of that, it's created a paradigm where I have to see a doctor every 6 months to make sure I'm not dying, and I have to keep myself on a menial income so I can continue to have Medicaid to make sure that I'm taken care of. I'm sure it's not news to anyone else, but the medical system is a racket, and like your first caller who talked about her struggle within the system, if you've been through the system in that way, it's your responsibility to go out there to your friends, to your neighbors, to your loved ones, and to strangers, and to help them navigate the system so that until we change it, people can get health care and get what they deserve.
Yeah.
And that's all I got.
Well, appreciate the call. Thank you for telling us your story. I mean, we should have single
No problem.
health care.
Keep up the fight, guys. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.
All right, folks, that ends the phone call portion of the program. Nice northern neighbor. PBD is the bizarro Michael. Come off link. Happy Newsday Tuesday, folks. The time has come for a full European defense union. Europe can't rely on NATO anymore. When European countries combine their militaries, it produces a military roughly the same size as the U.S. military. The resources are there. Is that true? I don't think that's the case. It may produce the same size as U.S. military participation in NATO. But my understanding is that our military is much bigger than that.
Yeah.
The resources are there, but the coordination needs to be improved. But when the U.S. says Europe needs to spend more on defense, they really mean Europe needs to line the pockets of U.S. defense contractors who line my pockets during every election.
Because their industry isn't there to.
Yes. Also, Thursday last week was my 3-year anniversary of becoming a member of the show. Well, then, tell me, please, thank you. And I like how you absolutely did not sabotage Tim Pool's sad attempt into foray into NASCAR.
You missed us last week. Not sure if you heard about it.
Oh, really? Did I miss it?
Yeah.
Or was I actually on a trip?
Looks like the Tim Pool car crashed.
With my pancake compressor and a power driver.
Yeah.
Yeah, there were reports of some guy leaving the pit crew area that wasn't authorized to be there.
Yeah. Right. Someone with the best calves anyone's ever seen. That's how he was identified to the police.
Kowalski from Nebraska. Welcome back, Emma. Your absence yesterday. Sam cursed more than you did in the previous week. He was really working blue. I don't think vacation really helped him. A lot of people who are sick and injured being forced to work in order to afford their medical care also take opioids to function through the pain. We've lost tens of thousands to the system every year.
Well, no, it's the Mexicans that are selling it to us.
Militant apathy. I always thought Kamala's idea to cover home-skilled nursing was a great idea that got no credit. It definitely was a great policy. A great policy that we talked about on this program, and they stopped talking about it about 45 minutes after they brought it up.
Yeah. I mean, they said all the good stuff they wanted to do before the convention, then they locked all that down, including Tim Walz.
I don't understand how you live in this country and have no clue about end-of-life care. Do they not have parents, grandparents, conservatism? It should be on the DSM.
It's hard for people to know how it works.
It's. I mean, look.
Byzantine.
Well, I mean, I wouldn't have any awareness beyond the statistic had I not gone through it, literally gone through it over the past 2 or 3 years. And it was extremely, complicated because you obviously want to try and keep your parent in their home as long as you can. And, you want to try and maximize that as much as possible. Having that home health care would have been an amazing blessing. But yeah, you got to be closer to my age before you deal with it with your parents. And you're not paying attention to what your parents are going through with their parents. CPG. You guys don't understand. With Neuralink, Elon Musk can compartmentalize the part of his brain that's got a conflict of interest from the part of his brain that's high on ketamine from the part of his brain that's objective, but still pro-apartheid.
I mean, and you see how Trump, you were out for their joint interview announcing their engagement. Like isn't that what it looked like? It was like the royal couple. Trump is genuinely wowed by the Neuralink thing. I mean, he gets his eyes widen, and the way he talks about Elon Musk's genius, this is the way a rich guy would who thinks that exercise is bad for you and that your body is a battery, thinks about healthcare. It's also what RFK represents. These rich people who are telling folks how to heal themselves with means that nobody has except to buy their supplements or, get a chip in your brain and enrich Elon Musk. It's crazy. But a guy like Trump, who's been rich his whole life, this is the kind of thing, it's like, Star Wars for him. That's how he thinks about this stuff.
Joe, happy Tuesday. Join the IWW. Left is best. ARC. Medicare Advantage and value-based care is one of the biggest threats to Medicare beneficiaries. I've worked in many roles in healthcare, from finance operations to clinical, et cetera. Between the consolidation of medical groups via private equity and their pursuit of value-based contracts and shifting of patients to Medicare Advantage plans, I can see a world of hurt for our seniors. Yeah, Medicare Advantage is just a scam. Brooklyn Sue. The intuitive part is they can tell those welfare recipients are unworthy, thanks to Reagan. All right. 10 more. Apple cideritis. Sam said he's taking calls. Get ready for him to take one call at 2:45. You were wrong.
Yeah, take it.
Bullprog. There's also fraud from groups taking Medicare, Medicaid, but not providing the services.
I mean, Rick Scott is doing half of all that.
Yeah.
Big Skeletor looking guy.
Yeah.
Cinematology. Sam, if you couldn't find egg. Okay, I already did that one. So still on number. Lefty band teacher is number 3. You see Tim Heidegger's coverage of Kevin O'Leary's playing guitar at his house. Worth watching. Watch before during the fun half. KNYC. Please talk about how terrible Andrew Cuomo is so we can clip it and share it with New Yorkers so that Cuomo does not become the next mayor.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hoping that this is just name recognition for right now. He's kind of at that 32, 33%.
We do need to do some work on Cuomo. Yeah. Every positive, progressive initiative that this state tried to do under Andrew Cuomo's governorship was thwarted by him both overtly and covertly. And I will also remind New Yorkers that universal pre-K, which if you have a child or plan to have a child, is a huge, huge benefit for you, for other New Yorkers, for education outcomes down the road, had to be fought tooth and nail from Cuomo, who wanted to do everything he could to stop it. Cuomo's also incredibly in the charter school back pocket. Ken Langone is biggest funder. I mean, I could go on and on about Cuomo. We'll do that in a more concerted effort.
Did you see Zoran's piece in Jacobin about Langone, NYU Langone, saying that, like, you might think that Langone is your biggest benefactor, but actually it's the city of New York, and we have rules here, and you should abide them, which is a good intervention.
Good. It's good. He's the man.
A Square. Sam, welcome back. Glad you took some time off. Hope the MR crew does the same at this brutalist time. That day in article analysis, the protests and the resistance acts, big and small, are a ray of light. The show these couple of weeks has been much needed to orient us at what's going on. Want to recommend 2 films for this time. An old one, To Live, with that scene about the chaos after the Chinese Cultural Revolution in a hospital where high schoolers are trying to deliver a baby and there's blood everywhere. Metaphor for Doge. The second one is I'm Still Here, about coping and resistance in the time of the autocratic government in Brazil in the 70s. I've heard about I'm Still Here. It's supposed to be great. I feel like I'll see you all in the streets at some point. Keep it lit.
Yep.
All right, 5 more. Dan from Columbus already read that. Jefferson Davis Vance. The guy whose brainchild, the Doge dividend, said it came to him in a dream. He then tweeted it to Elon. These people are having delusions of grandeur for clout. Yeah. Is that true? Sounds like Mormonism. Devilish. I work for the state government of Wisconsin. Several people in my division are paid with 100% federal funds. They're bracing for layoffs. All of the people in my division are paid between 50 and 75% federal funds. The Doge avalanche will hit state and local governments soon. Randy Bachman. 100% agree with Ronald Reagan. Majority Report wardrobe coordinator looking at the economic polling data. I just want to say F every Nikki Haley primary voter. Dems did nothing but pander to these douchebags, and they went and voted for Trump anyways.
That's true.
Good thing we'll never try to do that again.
Oh, please.
Colonel Burner, just realized my college-age daughter's boyfriend's cultivating a Che Guevara look and is almost a doppelganger at this point. Still not sure how we're supposed to feel about that guy.
Positively?
I think pretty good, all things considered.
I mean, I don't think that's
Che
controversial.
was a handsome guy.
Yeah.
Just Taylor, when calling my representatives, I've been framing Doge's usurping of the congressional power of the purse as taxation without representation. Elon Musk is now apparently gets to decide where my money goes. I and my fellow constituents have no say in the matter. Well, why the hell should I be taxed in a system like that?
Yep, good point. It makes a mockery of like Congress.
Totally. Final IM of the day, Goldman ball sacks. From the end of World War I until 1933, transgender people enjoyed previously unprecedented freedoms and rights. Large leaps were made in transgender medicine through the Institute for Sexual Science, and transgender culture flourished in Berlin. Following the 1932 Prussian coup d'etat, the Nazi seizure of power in 1933, transgender movements gathering places in institutions such as the first homosexual movement, the El Dorado nightclubs, and the Institute for Sexual Science were dissolved, often by force. Both trans men and trans women were targeted under renewed enforcement. Paragraphs 175 and 183 and their transvestite passes were revoked or simply ignored. Books and texts relating to transgender experiences or medicine were destroyed as un-German. All right, folks. Matt, Emma, Bradley, and Abstentia, good job today. Folks, we will see you tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie.